Sometimes the people we meet aren't here for who we are, but for who we were meant to become. Ryan never believed in fate. His life was made of routines. Wake up, work, sleep, repeat. Until the night he walked into the quiet bookstore tucked away in a forgotten corner of the city and saw her. She was sitting on the floor between shelves, tracing the edge of an old, leather-bound journal with her fingertips, her eyes distant like she was waiting for something or someone. Their eyes met, and for a split second, Ryan felt a strange pull, like she already knew him. The girl smiled softly, as if his arrival wasn't an accident, but an expectation. "You're late," she whispered. Ryan frowned. "Late? For what?" She closed the journal gently, stood up, and walked toward him with calm confidence. "For the future that's waiting for you. And me." The strangest connections are the ones that feel like they've always existed. Ryan blinked at the girl's words, unsure if he had heard her right. The bookstore was silent, dust dancing in the golden glow of the dim lamps. Yet her voice carried a weight that pressed deep into his chest. He cleared his throat nervously. "Do I know you?" Her lips curved into the kind of smile that made time feel fragile. "Not yet, but you will." Ryan laughed softly, trying to shake the unease crawling up his spine. "You sound like a fortune teller." "Maybe I am," she replied, tilting her head. "Or maybe I just know what hasn't happened yet." Her words should have sounded ridiculous, but the calm certainty in her tone left Ryan breathless. He didn't even know her name, yet she spoke as if their lives were already intertwined. He finally managed to ask, "So, who are you, Elena?" she said simply, her gaze unwavering. The way she said his name sent shivers down his spine. He hadn't told her. How he began, but she cut him off with a quiet murmur. "Because I've carried pieces of your future long before we met." Ryan froze, his heart pounding. He didn't believe in fate, didn't believe in destiny. But standing in that bookstore, staring into Elena's eyes, he couldn't shake the terrifying thought that maybe both believed in him. Some people you try to walk away from only to realize they're already walking inside you. Ryan left the bookstore that night with his mind in chaos. Elena's words clung to him like shadows he couldn't outrun. "I've carried pieces of your future." The phrase replayed in his head until it felt like it had carved itself into his thoughts. He told himself it was nothing, just a strange girl playing some cryptic game. Yet as he walked the familiar streets back to his apartment, he kept catching fragments of memory that weren't his flashes of laughter, whispers of promises, a silhouette of a girl standing beside him in the rain. By the time he reached home, he was shaking. He poured a glass of water, stared at his reflection in the kitchen window, and muttered, "I don't even know her. Why does it feel like I do?" Sleep was impossible. When he finally drifted into restless dreams, Elena was there, standing at the edge of his mind, holding the same journal she had touched in the bookstore. She whispered his name, and though the dream dissolved into darkness, Ryan woke with her voice echoing in his chest. The next evening, despite every rational thought screaming against it, Ryan found himself walking back toward that hidden bookstore. His hands were in his pockets, his pace quick, his heart betraying his intentions. And there she was. Elena sat at the same spot, the same journal in her lap, as if she had been waiting for him. When their eyes met, she didn't look surprised. She just smiled softly, knowingly. "I told you," she whispered as he stepped inside. "The future always finds its way back. The past is written in ink, but the future, sometimes it bleeds through the cracks." Ryan's eyes fell to the journal in Elena's lap. Its leather cover was cracked, edges frayed like it had traveled through too many hands and too many years. Something about it called to him, even before she tilted it slightly in his direction. "What's in there?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Alina traced the spine with her fingertips, her expression unreadable. "Your tomorrow," she said softly, "and the promises you haven't made yet." Ryan almost laughed, but the sound died in his throat. "You're serious?" Her gaze lifted to his, unwavering. "Do you want to see?" He hesitated, every rational part of him screaming that this was insane. But curiosity was louder than fear. Slowly he nodded. Alina opened the journal, turning a few brittle pages. The air seemed heavier, the world outside fading as Ryan's eyes locked on the words written inside. His name, over and over. Sentences that described moments he had never lived, walking through the rain with Alina, holding her hand under a flickering streetlight, whispering words of love he'd never spoken. He staggered back. "This is impossible." "It's inevitable," Alina murmured, closing the journal with a quiet thud. "Some stories write themselves before you're ready to live them." Ryan's chest tightened, his breath shallow. "So what you're saying, we're destined?" Alina leaned closer, her voice a fragile thread between them. "I'm saying I've been carrying the weight of what you haven't lived yet. I've loved you through every page." The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan's world had tilted, rewritten by the words of a girl he barely knew, yet somehow had always known. Sometimes belief doesn't come from proof, it comes from the way someone says your name. Ryan couldn't shake the weight of Elena's words. The journal felt like it had left an imprint on his chest, even though he hadn't touched it. Every detail written inside, every line carrying his name, pressed into his mind like a scar he never remembered getting. "Alina," he whispered, almost testing the sound of her name. She looked up at him, and in that single glance, Ryan felt something snap into place like a puzzle piece that had been missing all his life. Her eyes weren't just looking at him, they were remembering him. "How do you know me?" His voice cracked with the force of the question. "How could you possibly know things about me? I don't even know myself." Elena's lips trembled. "'Cause I've lived with your silence, Ryan. I've carried the echoes of your laughter before you ever laughed with me. I've dreamed your words before you ever spoke them." Ryan's throat tightened, emotions warring inside him. Logic screamed that none of this could be real, but his heart whispered that it already was. He sat down beside her, closer than before, his hands curling into fists. "Show me something. Prove it. It's not just words on a page. Something real." Alina hesitated, then reached out slowly, her fingers brushing against his. The moment their skin touched, Ryan felt it a spark, but not electric. It was a pull, a memory disguised as a future. He saw a flash in his mind, himself standing on a cliff. Elena's hair whipping in the wind, their hands intertwined as if they'd always been bound together. He gasped, jerking his hand back. What was that? Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. That was tomorrow, Ryan. The tomorrow you haven't lived yet. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was alive, thrumming with an unspoken promise neither of them dared to break. The heart often recognizes what the mind refuses to believe. Ryan walked home that night with Elena's words echoing in his head. The city lights blurred around him, every step heavy with confusion and an ache he couldn't name. He told himself it wasn't real, that it was impossible, but the memory of that vision when she touched his hand refused to fade. By the time he reached his apartment, he felt as if he was carrying an invisible weight. Sleep didn't come easily. When it did, it wasn't restful. His dreams replayed the image he had seen, himself standing on that cliff with Alina. Except in the dream, she whispered something he couldn't quite hear before everything dissolved into mist. The next morning, Ryan woke with a pounding heart and a question lodged in his chest. Was she showing him fragments of a future he had done to yet lived? Or was his mind tricking him into believing in something impossible? Unable to resist, he went back to the small cafe. And there she was, Lena sitting at the same corner table as if she had been waiting for him all along. Their eyes met, and this time, Ryan didn't avoid the pull. He walked straight toward her and sat down without asking. "You came back," Elena said softly, almost with relief. "I shouldn't have," Ryan muttered. "But I had to." They sat in silence for a moment, their unspoken thoughts filling the air. Finally, Ryan asked, "What else do you know about me?" Alina reached for the journal she carried with her everywhere. She opened it carefully as though it were fragile and slid it across the table toward him. "At it. Read who you are to me." Ryan hesitated, then opened the journal. The first page was a sketch of him. It's not just any sketch, but him standing under the very streetlight where they had first met. His heart thudded against his ribs. He flipped to another page. There he was again, laughing, eyes crinkled in joy. Couldn't remember a single moment where he had looked that carefree. And yet, Alina had drawn it as if she had seen it herself. How? How could you know these things? Ryan's voice was strained, a mixture of awe and fear. Lene's eyes softened. "Because I have lived them in my dreams. I don't know why or how, but every time I wake up, I write them down, afraid I'll lose you before I ever find you." Ryan stared at the journal, torn between disbelief and the undeniable pull in his chest. His world had always been orderly, predictable, logical, but with Alina, everything felt unexplainably alive. For the first time in years, Ryan felt a question he had never dared to ask himself. What if love didn't need proof? What if it was the proof? Fate doesn't ask for permission. It arrives, uninvited, demanding to be faced. Ryan couldn't get Elena's journal out of his mind. Every page felt like a mirror reflecting a version of himself he had never known. It terrified him, but it also pulled him closer. Days turned into weeks, and their meetings became a rhythm of their own. They didn't plan it, but somehow they always found each other. At the cafe, walking along the river, sitting under the old oak tree in the park. Every conversation peeled away a layer Ryan had buried long ago. One evening, as the city glowed under the fading sunset, Alina invited Ryan to her small apartment. He hesitated, but curiosity outweighed his caution. Inside, the walls were lined with canvases, portraits, sketches, half-finished paintings, all of Ryan. Some depicted him smiling, others standing in places he'd never been, like an ancient church by the sea or a forest drenched in fog. Ryan froze. These can't be real. You painted places I've never been. Alina stepped closer, her voice trembling but steady. Not yet. Ash. But you will. And I'll be there too. Her certainty shook him more than the paintings. He wanted to laugh it off, to dismiss her words as fantasy, but deep down, something inside him whispered that she was right. Before he could speak, thunder cracked outside. A sudden storm swept over the city, rain battering the windows. Alina turned to close them, but Ryan noticed something unusual, a sketch pinned by her desk. It wasn't of him. It was of a shattered watch, broken glass scattered around it, with the time frozen at 11:47. Ryan's chest tightened. "What's that?" he asked. Elena's face went pale. "That's the moment I've never been able to understand. Every dream, every vision leads to it, and whenever I see it, I wake up in tears." Ryan stared at the drawing, unease crawling through him. A broken watch. A moment suspended in time. "Does it mean something's going to happen?" he whispered. Elena's eyes glistened as she met his gaze. "I don't know, but I fear it does. And somehow, what's tied to you?" The storm outside raged louder, as if echoing the storm that had just begun in Ryan's heart. Sometimes the scariest truths aren't the ones hidden from us. They re the ones waiting to be remembered. The storm had passed by morning, but Ryan couldn't forget the sketch of the shattered watch. The time 11:47 burned into his mind like a scar. He tried to push it away, but every glance at Elena reminded him that answers lay just beyond his reach. The next day, Elena invited him to the library. "There's something you need to see," she said, her voice softer than usual. She led him through the archives, past rows of dusty shelves, until she stopped at a newspaper from 12 years ago. She unfolded it with trembling hands. Ryan leaned in. The headline froze his breath. "Train derailment claims dozens of lives. Survivors speak of miracles." And there, in the middle of the article, was a picture. A teenage girl, Elena. She looked pale, shaken, but alive. The caption said she had been found unconscious at the scene. Ryan's pulse hammered. You were there?" Elena nodded slowly. "I was one of the survivors, but that night, I remember something strange. I wasn't alone. I remember a boy pulling me out, dragging me to safety. His face was blurry, but his voice," she swallowed hard, "was yours, Ryan." He staggered back, shaking his head. "That's impossible. I wasn't there. I didn't even live in this city back then." Her eyes filled with tears. "Maybe not in this time. But I know it was you." Ryan's chest constricted. Memories he didn't have began to flicker in fragment shadows of smoke, screams, the metallic screech of collapsing tracks, a hand reaching out, a voice calling Elena's name. He gasped, gripping the table. "Why am I remembering this? Shh, none of this happened to me." Elena touched his hand gently. "Because your future and my past are tied together. That broken watch. It's the moment our worlds collided, Ryan. It's the moment that never belonged to time." For the first time, Ryan couldn't argue. The fear, the connection, the visions, it all pointed to something beyond reason. Deep inside, he realized one terrifying truth. He had been running from a past that wasn't his, yet somehow it was. When the past and future collide, love becomes the only compass. Ryan couldn't sleep. The image of the broken watch haunted him, kept hearing it in his dreams, the sharp crack of glass, the frozen tick of time at 11:47, the echo of Elena's voice calling out in the dark. The next evening, he found himself pacing the riverside where he and Elena often met. She arrived, clutching the old sketchbook to her chest, her face pale but determined. "I think I know what the watch means," she whispered. "It's not just about the accident. It's about a choice. Your choice." Ryan frowned. "A choice? What kind of choice?" Elena opened the sketchbook to the last page. A drawing of Ryan standing on the same riverside, his hand outstretched to her. Behind him, the watch lay shattered at his feet. "You saved me once," she said softly. "But time. Every time we find each other, it breaks something to stop us. The watch is proof." Ryan's breath caught. "So what are you saying? That being with you could break time itself?" Tears shimmered in Elena's eyes. "Yes. And yet every vision, every dream still leads me to you. Even if it means I lose everything again." The weight of her words pressed down on him. Ryan's mind screamed at him to walk away, to run before the storm of fate swallowed them both. But his heart had already chosen. He stepped closer, his voice steady but fierce. "Then let it break, let time shatter. If it means losing the world but keeping you, I'll take that risk." Elena gasped, tears spilling freely now. She clutched his hand as thunder rolled in the distance. For the first time, Ryan didn't fight the pull between them. He surrendered. And in that moment, as the storm surged and the city lights flickered, Ryan realized something profound. The broken watch wasn't a warning, it was a key. A reminder that love was indeed meant to be measured in minutes or hours, but in the courage to hold on, even when time itself stood against them. The world around them seemed to pause as if holding its breath. And for the first time, Ryan wasn't afraid of what came next. Some endings aren't really endings. They're promises that time can't erase. The storm outside raged, as if the universe itself had been listening to their vow. Ryan and Elena stood hand in hand, the air between them thick with electricity. Not from the thunder, but from something deeper, finally bending to their choice. Suddenly, Ryan's chest ached. A memory that wasn't his own burst forward, fire screams. Elena's face covered in ash. His own hand reaching, pulling her out of darkness. He stumbled, gasping. Elena held him. "You're remembering," she whispered. "Not just the past, Ryan, you're remembering us." And then he saw it all. Not just the train derailment. Not just the broken watch. But lives upon life's different years, different cities, different beginnings. Every time they found each other. Every time the world tried to keep them apart. And every time they chose love. Ryan fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. It was always you. No matter where, no matter when. It's always been you. Elena dropped beside him, cupping his face, and it always will be. The storm broke suddenly, as if the sky itself had surrendered. Rain poured down, drenching them both, but neither moved. In the downpour and the chaos, there was only stillness between them. Ryan pulled the broken watch from Elena's sketchbook. When had it gotten there? He didn't know, as he held it. The hands that had been frozen at 11:47 trembled and then began to move. Tick, tick, tick. Time restarted. Elena gasped, clutching his hand tighter. "Ryan, you fixed it." He shook his head, smiling through his tears. "No, Elena, we fixed it. By choosing each other, we chose a future time couldn't break." The rain slowed. The world breathed again. For the first time, Ryan felt free, not from fate, not from fear, but from the silence he had always carried inside. He kissed her, not as a stranger, not as a man bound by time, but as someone who finally understood his own unspoken future. And in that kiss, Ryan and Elena weren't just rewriting destiny. They were proving that love is the only story time has never been able to control.